أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. Thank you for joining the Ramadan Reflection series this evening. Just like last week, I intend for this to be casual. I will offer a very short reflection and then we'll have some time for questions and a discussion after. I will be recording this portion, the reflection part of the conversation, so I ask that you keep your mics on mute during this time. Jazakallah khair. Last week, I talked about being more intentional with our time and practices in Ramadan as a way for us to reframe our time and experience of physical distancing. This week, I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of spiritual solitude or khalwa versus physical isolation. There's a fine line between these two, and especially right now. Before I go further, I want to share a few definitions of words that have been coming up in my thought process this past week. So the first is the definition of solitude, which is the state or situation of being alone. The second word being isolation or isolate, to set or place apart, detach or separate so as to be alone. And lastly, the word loneliness, a subjective feeling that we do not have enough social connection in our life. The first two words have a very similar definition, but in my mind, they have very different connotations. Solitude being something that is actively chosen and a little bit more positive, while isolation is something that as a result of circumstance or others, and has a little bit more of a negative connotation. Solitude and isolation are objective and descriptive terms, while loneliness is more of an emotional response. Thinking about our experiences right now, we may be feeling a combination of all of these states, all of which are completely normal. We are social beings that seek out connection, and many of our infrastructures of community and connection are on hiatus right now. So what does all of this have to do with khalwa or spiritual solitude? Khalwa was a practice of the Prophet ﷺ and many of the other prophets ﷺ. As people who are so intimately involved in the lives of their communities and connected with so many people, it was essential that they took time out where they could be more present with the divine. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ had a regular practice of going to Cave Hira, even before he was a prophet, as a way to get out of the city and be able to reflect, and this would continue throughout his prophethood. It became even more important for him when he and his community were faced with oppression, rejection, and other challenges. The retreat to Cave Hira was a practice for him to go deeper within and higher with the divine, and this is where he found his strength. In Surah Yunus, chapter 10, verse 67, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "He it is who made the night for you that you might rest therein, and the day by which to see. Truly, in that are signs for people who hear." This is a verse that is often cited in Sufi understandings as spiritual retreat. I think it is interesting to think about the imagery here. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the image of darkness and the night as a place for retreat and rest. This is also seen in Surah Naba, chapter 78, verse 10, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "And made the night as clothing." It is often the night when the world around us is quieter that we can take time to sit with ourselves and engage in some of our own spiritual practices. Night is the time when we often have less responsibilities, or maybe are just not as tied to them in the same ways as we are during the daytime, and have some time to take a few extra moments for ourselves. This is a time that our guards are lowered and we are more vulnerable. We are able to engage with the deeper thoughts and confront more of our raw feelings. In these moments, the quiet and the darkness lowers the distractions to our physical senses, allowing the heightening of our spiritual senses. Especially in the month of Ramadan, this also happens during the day when we're fasting because we are not eating and drinking. The act of worship prepares us for the night when we are able to both physically and spiritually rest. We need this rest so that we can face the days coming ahead. Many of us seek opportunities inside and outside of Ramadan to practice itikaf or khalwa in different forms. It could range from staying in the masjid for a few days or a few weeks to going to a more remote place to be in retreat. We seek these moments and opportunities to step away from the busyness of our lives and the activities that normally occupy our attention for something quieter that allows us to go inward and seek a deeper connection with the divine. We seek these moments to ground us, to take a step back and recalibrate. These moments are special because we can remember the feeling and we can engage with them in smaller bits when we return to our normal lives. And they sustain us until the next time we're able to take some of the deeper time off. When we are spending so much time alone or distantly away from others, how do we make the separation between the two? Right now, the added layer of the physical distancing can be overwhelming to think about doing, something that is further removing us from connection with others. This can be a fine line for some, and if it is, don't push yourself for more than what is comfortable. While we saw the image of the night used, and that is often a time when many of us engage in spiritual practices, it's not the only time to do it. We have the daytime, we have different times during the week that might be special, that might be times where we can take a step back and use it as a time for spiritual retreat. I want all of us to think about how each of us can find ways to step back from the routine of our days and find ways in which we can engage more deeply with ourselves. We may start off by doing this only for a few minutes a day and gradually increase the time. We may pick a time of day that we don't have many other things that will occupy our time and attention. And when we find this time, I want to invite all of us to ask ourselves, what are the things that I am most yearning for? How can I connect more deeply with myself and with my Lord? Who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for me? And let this be a time of uninhibited thoughts. Don't worry about having a fully coherent thought process. Don't worry about making sure you're thinking about the things in the right order, in the right way. This is a time for you to spend with you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a Sami, the one who hears all, which includes that which is said audibly, that which is said coherently, that which is said jumbled, and that which is said which is only spoken in our hearts. So, Ya Allah, who is Al-Mu'min, the inspirer of faith, allow for us to find connection with you and to find moments of peace in our hearts and bodies. Provide for us a space that is comforting so that we may let the layers that we put up for others fall away, and let us be with you in the best of states. Ya Allah, who is Al-Musawwir, the shaper of beauty, let our worship of you adorn our lives. Let our relationship with you be the foundation of beauty that we encounter others with. Ya Allah, who is Al-Latif, the subtle one, you alone know the depth of what is in our hearts and in our souls. You are the one who knows the subtleties and complexities of what we are going through. Allow us to find moments of retreat so that we may find peace and wisdom to know what is best. Ameen. Jazakallah khair all for joining me. Inshallah, I will be stopping the recording now, and we can start some discussion, and inshallah.